I'm going to ask each of the candidates to introduce yourself, tell me why you're running, your qualifications, why you're the better choice, whatever you want to say, a minute and a half. Mr. Matisich, let's begin with you.
Hi, my name's Matt Matisich. I'm the North Side Republican of the city of Virginia. Been running for these offices on a consistent basis, and my message is change. The message we have to face up on the range, and I noticed the earlier candidates forum, and nobody wants to address it. The biggest problem we got on the range is parochialism and our inability to work together. We saw this especially here in the Quad City. We can't even work together for a Quad City high school. My God, we'd rather see school superintendents, principals, and all those underlings have job security instead of an expanded curriculum for the kids in this area and for the development of education. It's pathetic. This is what I will work for. And to be honest with you, hard. And I've been on the Quad City theme ever since I was on the city council some 30 odd years ago. So it has to happen. Go ahead, Jason.
Representative Metsa.
You know, I think there's a lot of important things when you're running for office. I'd agree that we do need to work better together up here in terms of our local government, but also as a state representative, I don't believe it's my job to interject into every local decision being made. And I have carried some legislation over the last few years that I believe benefits the district as a whole. We've worked hard on the Highway 53 relocation in a session where we didn't have any transportation funding. I'm proud to say that Senator Tomassoni, myself, and the range delegation were able to bring over $160 million of state money back to get the project done on time. And we were able to carry a school bill that addressed some of those issues, creating an account that all districts could access if they were working cooperatively together. I've also spent time, I represent all the way almost down to Duluth, and so spent time working over the last 4 years on a fully USDA certified processing plant in the region, which now is looking like it won't be in my district, but close in Hermantown. And I feel that that would bring our families in the area healthier opportunities for them to access food grown by local farmers and expand the economy with those things as well.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Chris to ask our first question. Representative Metsa, you can answer first. Since it's just the two of you, if you gentlemen want to rebut, just kind of give me a little indication, and I think we'll allow that. Chris?
This year's legislative session ended without a bonding bill, without transportation funding, without an increase in local government aid, and with other failings. What needed to be done differently, and how can we get past politics to serve all Minnesotans?
Well, that's a great point. It was pretty embarrassing coming home, and you know, I think one thing we really need to work on is getting rid of the partisanship in politics. When we were in the majority, we spent, as our delegation has for many, many years, spent a lot of time reaching across the aisle, finding that middle ground. And overall, I feel like this last session, there wasn't middle ground to reach per se. Every time we got towards thinking we had something close, things would unravel right at the end. It was all done in a last minute fashion, and Minnesota taxpayers should be disappointed, and I hope that they send that message to the electeds in the polls this year.
Thank you, Mr. Matisich.
We got a governor that is polarized. He's forgotten where he's come from. It's a crying shame. He's supposed to lead. He can't lead Republicans nor Democrats, nor his own Democratic Party. At least when Reagan was there, for example, on the federal level, he knew how to bring the Republicans and the Democrats together. This governor, he throws everything in the face of, especially the people of the Iron Range up here, and then he expects things to happen. It's time we get on this governor's back and realize we don't take it for granted.
30 seconds.
You know, I'd agree that we have a lot of work to do. I don't think the blame solely lies in the governor, and I'm not saying that to defend him. I do feel that the legislature, when we have all year long, actually 2 years, to get a transportation bill done and a bonding bill. We've talked about the same language over and over and over again, and nothing changed much. Overall, we had leadership on the Republican side of the aisle this year that put bills out with minutes left, with massive errors, and I think that putting things out to the public in a timely fashion, and I do think we need to address some of the things you've mentioned, but I would say that it's a lot more than just the governor.
Thank you. Classy?
All right, sorry, I'm mixing this up here.
Question 2, please.
One of the failings this year and the past several years has been the lack of long-range funding plan for transportation. How do you support paying for ongoing bridge and highway maintenance, an increase in gas tax, a miles driven tax, cutting other things from the state budget, another strategy, a combination of things, what?
Matt, we'll start with you.
Okay. As far as the transportation department, they gotta start spending money properly. And instead of letting these engineers and their consultants and everybody go wild, oh, this is something new, we gotta try it. We got our Richelieu or San Francisco Bridge here being built in the city of Virginia, $250 million, 53 right-of-way. I don't know what the hell they were doing during that period of time, drinking coffee? Now you go run down these interstate highways. They're putting in these barrier mediums, with the cable and everything, costing billions and millions of dollars. Again, waste of damn money. It's time that the Department of Transportation spend money properly. There's enough money there. Go ahead, Jason.
Representative Metz on funding transportation, please.
The major hang-up that we had this year was actually light rail. And I'm disappointed that we didn't allow a local community, and especially over the summer here when they came out with 3 different options, to fund it almost solely themselves. And I think what a lot of Minnesotans aren't looking at is the fact that if we allow these communities to do that without state dollars, that it would bring in almost $1 billion in federal transportation money. And I think we can say we haven't done a lot here in Minnesota over the last few years in terms of the partisanship we've seen, but we all know that Congress right now has been much, much worse. And I think that raising a gas tax is the fairest way to pay for any increase in long-term sustainable. I've been saying that since I took office. And that way everyone pays their fair share. I think that a mileage tax is unfair to rural areas of the state where people drive more between work. And so I would support a gas tax for any increased funding needs.
Mr. Mazich, 30 seconds.
If
please.
we have to raise fees, we're gonna put it on a tab. The gas tax affects rural Minnesota far more than it does metro. The metros are the cause of all this high budget and everything. They're the ones that should have to pay for it through tab fees. I hate to see that gas tax. In fact, I hate to see gas taxes go up. It just irritates me. But if we gotta do it, let's do it on a tab fee, and let's do it fairly that way instead of a gas tax. And they can increase their bus fees down in the metro too. Always, rural Minnesota got time for metros to pay for it.
Representative Metz, 15 seconds.
The tab fee is probably the worst way, in my opinion, to do sustainable funding package, because with the gas tax, we're a tourism state, especially up here. We take in money from tourists that are coming through the area, and overall I think that a tab fee is just unfair. If you look at a retiree, for example, someone who got a Buick to ride out the end of their life so they have a car, they might see double $100 in a year and an increased fee to cover that. A gas tax, they might, on average, for a person driving 15,000 miles, see about $30 a year. So I think it's much more fair to do a gas tax.
Jason, you know who lowered that tab fee?
Jesse Ventura?
Jesse Ventura, because he was sick and tired of paying $1,000 for his Porsche. Let's increase that to back to $1,000 for a Porsche. It's about time Jesse pays his fair share in the state of Minnesota.
I'm almost afraid, but let's move on. Bernie.
Like transportation, rural broadband is a priority lawmakers seem to love to support. Year after year, funding for rural broadband is inadequate. How big a priority is it for you and why?
Representative Metzel, we'll start with you, sir.
My first term in the legislature, and I think that we created an account that was balanced. And what I mean by that is cities with broadband right now, even Virginia as an example, where you might not have access to the highest speeds out there, will benefit from running lines to rural areas that don't have any access. And that is something I fought for the entire time down there, and successfully at that, we were able to get that done. It was a senator in our DFL majority that was carrying a bill that would have allowed cities to access the money. And in my mind, we all grow together essentially, and if we have more people with access in our rural areas, in Barris, Twig, wherever we're looking at, Britt, we need those people to get it, because when you're installing that equipment, it will increase the capability for the folks in the city, because they need that extra bandwidth to pump out into the rural areas, and therefore we'll all do better, and I'll continue to fight for that same language and fairness.
Mr. Mazich, is broadband a big deal for you?
Well, I live in town on the north side up there, and we've had broadband, or Mediacom has delivered broadband services for umpteen years, and you pay for it. I think I'm paying roughly about $60 a month for it. I get a kick. Our good friend Aaron Brown now, who lives out in the middle of nowhere, is going to have subsidized broadband delivered to him, and he's only going to pay $50. And now he's going to be bragging. He was bragging about he's going to get rid of his satellite, download and watch his all those cable shows and everything. And who's subsidizing us in town? Nobody. The government starts doing all this stuff, and it starts screwing up the system. Go ahead, Jason.
There was actually, if you look at the federal legislation, a little tax that had been on your phone bill for many, many, many years, and the feds finally released that money, and our state, and not the state itself, but our state will see a huge portion of that come back, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it goes right back to the providers that do the services, whether it's CenturyLink, who I have because they're a good union company, and Mediacom. They will all benefit from that expansion opportunity. So I think that making sure that the money is there, and that we're putting a match in the state to again reach those nooks and crannies is crucial. So.
Any more, Mr. Mazich?
All I can say is, the subsidies, nobody helps us here in the city. We've been paying our own. I take a look even at our public utilities bill. Christ, we pay $100 flat charge before we even turn on an ounce of energy. And Christ, a lot of it started when we were supposed to, for example, we were supposed to help on the wood burner here in Virginia and Hibbing. Here we are, we're supposed to help them, so-called, they sold it on the basis of the Metro, and I was on the IRRB board, and I voted for that. And all of a sudden, they tell us the story, this and that. Then a year later, here we get increases in our steam rates, in our flat charges and everything. Government starts the story and things get screwed up. Let the free market system work.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Another major responsibility of state government is education and education funding. How can education be improved in Minnesota, including closing the achievement gap, and what measures would you push?
We'll start with Mr. Mazich.
Okay, from what I assume, a school district gets 90% of its educational funding from the state of Minnesota, and the rest is local participation. Am I correct, roughly?
Pretty close.
On that. And I take a look now up on the range. I look, they're growing like crazy. They're building brand new schools down there and everything, and it's nice. They got an economy that can do it and fund it and population and everything. We've got a contracting population on the range. We like to think we're doing something on economic development. We've done deadly since 1981, 82, when we saw our peak populations in this area, and we've been dwindling. everybody's had to adjust, except the bureaucracies up here. And it just irritates the hell out of me. You look at it, we had a so-called consolidation movement here a few years back that failed, which was no consolidation movement at all, since you had 3 school superintendents in the same school facility. You had principals, all that action. It was, wait, we have to face up on here on the range. We gotta face consolidation. That's it. You know,
Representative Metsa?
go ahead.
Education is something that I've prioritized my entire time in the legislature. I think in looking at the funding we've done locally here, the school consolidation account that we created is roughly over the course of its life in a 20-year period going to be over $100 million of local taxpayer money going back into our communities. We were able to do my first term with Representative Moline, $38 million in repairs to some of our schools, which if they're on the historic list and especially in rural areas, can add a significant amount of cost for things like running fiber optic cable to update the classrooms so they can access the internet. And those are all things we need to look at. I really think we need to go back to what worked, and that was Wendell Anderson's Minnesota Miracle. And that allowed school districts all over the state to access funding on a more equal basis, providing a more equal opportunity, especially for rural areas and in our areas that need a little extra help in the metro that don't have as much local property tax money there as well.
Thank you very much. My apologies, I failed to introduce Tina Guida at the beginning. She's holding up signs that tell you how much time you have
Yeah, we
left.
saw that.
And when the time is done, I appreciate if the candidates would respect the time limitations. I'd like to ask you both just for 30-second rebuttals on this issue of education. The question included the achievement gap and what the state can do to try to close the achievement gap. Matt, do you have any ideas on that?
Again, I'm directing myself to local here, because that's the number one issue in this. What's his name? Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. Let's keep it local. That's what our view is. You're talking about the achievement gap?
Yeah, that's a local problem.
It's a local, for here. We used to have some of the finest schools up here in northeastern Minnesota on the range. Today, when US World Report ranks the schools, we're not even in the top rankings anymore. But we got school superintendents, principals, all their underlings being employed. We got to look at curriculum consolidation up here. That's the key to making this range work again. The range worked before because we took a priority in education. That education priority has fallen.
Representative Metsa, 30 seconds.
So the achievement gap's a difficult thing. No matter, I think, what we do, there's always going to be something in the formula that doesn't work for a certain group. And, that's why I mentioned the Minnesota Miracle. I think it did the best to address the achievement gap across the state, just in a blanket setting. And I think that if we could get back to that and some of the policies that came with that, it gives more money for our rural communities, it gives more money for poor areas in the metro and or any population center.
Insurance companies are bailing promptly, some to call for dismantling Minnesota Sure. Does Minnesota need to start over with this health exchange, move on into federal exchange, or what when it comes to the Affordable Care Act?
Representative Metsa, we start with you, sir.
I think that there are plenty of issues with MNsure. I'm not going to get out there and defend the program at all. We could have done a much better job putting it together. But I do got to say, over the last 2 years with the layoffs up here, I did see it work for the families who needed it. And I think at our last forum, Mr. Manisich, we agreed on single-payer health care. And I'm still there. I think that it was a mistake not to do that the first time, and would hope that we could move towards that. And in specific regard to some of the downfalls in MNsure as it exists right now, I don't think moving to a federal exchange would fix that overnight. It might cause more problems and more flux for the families who are needing those insurance dollars. And so I would say we stick with what we got. We have one of the best ones, even though it has a lot of fault in the country, and we just need to continue working bipartisanly to fix it.
Okay, Mr. Madison?
You know, the last figures I saw, roughly 18 and 19% of GNP in this country goes to healthcare. Europeans do it with 10%. They have a better healthcare system. People live longer over there than by 2 years, roughly 2-3 years. We don't have to start reinventing all this stuff. We just throw these damn lobbyists out of Washington that are screwing the whole damn thing up. Take a look at what Germany does. They've had a national health care system since before Hitler, between 1920, I think, 19 teens, whatever they did. Let's take a look at that system. Let's duplicate it in this country. We don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. Good.
Any more?
I would just say, you know, people have probably been following issues like raising the EpiPen prices. I think it's criminal, and support Senator Klobuchar's efforts and the legislation she's working on right now to address some of those. And I do think we need to do it on a case-by-case basis.
30 seconds, Mr. Madison?
Just be careful when everybody attacks the drug industry, the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry has basically, through research and development, has increased the lifespan of a human being by 10 to 15 years. Remember that. Cardiovascular cancer aren't the death sentence or premature death sentences that they used to be. Because we're all gonna die. I like the word premature death. So, you know, we've expanded our lifespan 10, 15 years. Take a look at it, across the board. MS, diabetes, you name it. Be careful when you attack the pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you. 10 seconds.
Just one quick thing with the pharmaceutical industry, I hope they got were research from taxpayers. The EpiPen is a perfect example of that.
I'd say 10 seconds, but there's no way you can do
Oh,
it.
I'll say it.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, remember, the federal income tax is federal policy. So agreed, federal policy. But be careful. They've done a great job. For the most high-tech industry in our country is the pharmaceutical industry.
Moving on, Vern.
All right, we get to hear from Vern now.
All right. I think we're on 6, right?
Yes.
Even after 10 years of scientific and environmental review, some are trying to stop the PolyMet project. In the same way, Twin Metals' plans to mine copper, nickel, and other precious metals has been divisive. Where do you stand on PolyMet? Where do you stand on Twin Metals?
Mr. Madison.
A little history on precious metals up here. A little history. It started back in 1920. The marketplace wasn't there for how we had to mine our minerals up here in northeastern Minnesota, and the prices weren't there. About 25, 30 years ago, Cypress Minerals tried that same thing up in Babbitt. The prices weren't there. Prices have come up, technologies have developed. Now it's profitable to make things happen up here. It just irks the hell out of me. We're doing, the infrastructure is here, everything to make that happen. But yet you have these environmentalists that go crazy and they won't change their lifestyles. They're the largest consumers of all these new copper, mineral, and everything because of their damn lifestyles. Then, this is the one that really gets me. Freeport-McMoRan from Arizona will, one of the largest mineral companies in the world, will go to the Congo, deal with tribal chieftains, build an infrastructure, 280 inches of rain in that rainforest, all that, because it's cheaper to do it over there than it is here, or rather than dealing with environmentalists, the attorneys, and the whole kit and caboodle. We can do it here, we can do it clean, and we can show the world how it should be done, not in third world nations.
Thank you. Representative Metsa?
I agree, we shouldn't be relying on third world nations without the same protections and standards we have here to do it. And I think that any company, whether it's PolyMet, Twin Metals, that can meet our current state and federal standards should be able to do business in this state. And overall, we were in pretty strong disagreement with the governor's position, pulling the leases and remain that way. I think that there's nothing wrong with doing our due diligence in some of these projects and making sure they're up to spec and meeting our standards so we don't have issues like they did in Canada with Mount Vernon and stuff. But right now, we've got the most environmentally friendly mining on the planet. And I think that we can do that for many more generations up here. And overall, when we're looking at that economic opportunity, I think that the prices will ebb and flow over time again, and that we just need to have a good base system in place here for those companies to be able to meet and our standards, and then essentially be able to get a permit without getting bogged down by the groups.
Jason, when are you guys gonna jump on the governor? Your DFL delegation from the Iron Range has treated him so nicely. I'm waiting, now you're a little guy, but I'm waiting for Tom Bach to do something. He's my size. They're doing nothing to the governor. He walks away freely. It's a bunch of baloney.
Representative Metsa?
You know, we did confront the governor. We did do it publicly in the papers, and I feel like, you know, part of being diplomatic is allowing him to make his choice and us to have our opinion. Governors will come and go. The best part about the legislature right now is that hopefully, assuming I can earn people's support again, is that I'll be there after the governor's gone and work with someone else and make sure that we have a system again that's fair. And I think that overall the companies need to be treated equally. Right now that's not the case with Twin Metals at all.
Real quick, 30 seconds each, and I'm going to start with you, Representative Metsa, on the proposal to have an evidentiary hearing on PolyMet with an administrative law judge. Support or don't support?
You know, as of right now, and you're referring to the Duluth City Council resolution tonight, or meeting tonight?
Yeah, but they're calling on the Minnesota DNR, so it's definitely a state issue.
Yeah, I think that we've had plenty of opportunities for citizens to participate, and if they chose not to participate in any of those opportunities over the last 10 years, I don't see what another hearing is going to accomplish, and at this point I think that it's unfair to ask the process to stop, which is currently in place, and they've applied for permits. As we all know, there's ample opportunity in that process for public review and input, and I think that that is the setting for it, and that's where they should do it. I don't think a new administrative hearing is the way to go.
Final word on this issue, Mr. Matizich.
You know, what irritates me, what the hell has happened in the city of Duluth with the Green Liberals taking that over? The Duluth and the Iron Range were one, now they're separate. Let's remember also the history of the Green Liberals in this state. Back in 64, or pardon me, 62, when the Taconite Amendment was going through, there was Anderson that was against the Taconite Amendment, future governor of the state of Minnesota. It's time we all stand up here and in your face to these Green Liberals. That's the bottom line. They're not changing their lifestyles.
Thank you. Chris, question number 7, please.
Last winter, the legislature played politics instead of helping laid-off miners and others out of work on the Iron Range. With measures to curb steel dumping now in place and with the steel industry now seemingly rebounding, what does the Minnesota legislature still need to do to bolster the economy in northeastern Minnesota?
Representative Metsa, we start with you.
You know, it was very unfortunate the way that politics unraveled in getting those workers who, through no fault of their own, lost their job because of bad trade deals that we have on a federal level. I think that holding our federal candidates currently running for president to what they're saying about opposing deals that would just export American jobs, whether it's in the steel industry, manufacturing, auto, is something we absolutely need to continue to address. I think that overall we did a good job putting the bill together. I was the author of the extension. I also ended up by proxy authoring the negotiated agreement to give companies actually in Minnesota $260 million in rebates for their unemployment insurance, and did it in a way that was fair and equitable to accomplish getting our workers 30 million in benefits, but I don't think it's fair for anyone to have been in a position to give away 260 million in corporate rebates for $30 million in unemployment extension. I think that was very inappropriate.
Mr. Matzich?
Bottom line, politics is politics. And here's the reason why Mr. Dalton, the Republican House, didn't get the unemployment benefits there. You don't have nobody representing us up there on the range in the Republican ticket. You're on the back burner. It's time the range elects at least one lousy Republican like myself to challenge Dalton. You're gonna see a way difference in how this area gets treated by the Republican Party. Because I'm not afraid to go into Dalt's face either. Okay.
What about the second half of that question?
What's that?
Representative Metza, first of all, what do we need to do to help bolster the economy on the range and in northeastern Minnesota?
Yeah, my apologies, I ran out of time there. I think that working towards bringing projects like Louisiana Pacific into Hoyt Lakes, we focused a lot on our natural resource-based economy up here. I think there's good opportunity in developing what we were hoping with Segetis, which was supposed to be at the site that LP's going to. They make Method soap and the chemicals that go into that, which is on the shelves at Target. And I don't think there's a better place to get those resources than our local forests up here.
Thank you. Mr. Matzich, on bolstering the economy?
You know, the IRRB, a great concept, but it's done a poor job in economic development. Over $1 billion has been spent in economic development, and you don't see too much action, except maybe when Dougie John, well, with Northwest Airlines, with Blue Shield Blue Cross, and also with Delta Dental. One thing to look at, and I've studied the IRRB, they did a better job in economic development when they were situated down in Minneapolis or down in the St. Paul office, Twin Cities, than they've done situated up here in Evelyn. That's really sad, because back then, even though you had strong iron mining going on, they did a lot of things with the shirt factories that came up here and with various other corporations. So maybe it would be better for the IRRB to have an office down in the Twin Cities there promoting itself than what we see up here.
Representative Metza, Mr. Matzich went a little long. Would you like another 10, 15 seconds, or?
Sure.
Should we move on? Okay.
You know, we've got a lot of improvement to do, and I think one thing overall that we could do as a start is I believe strongly that local elected officials, like you had mentioned in your opening statement, do a lot, and they affect their life as you go from federal down to school board, city council. That's where the rubber hits the road. I think that we could adjust some of the formulas in this, which have gotten political over the many years you've mentioned, and our region right now, Mintax supplies a majority of the money that goes out to all these other communities, and I think we could give it out to the communities to spend themselves rather than doing it at the board.
Thank you very much. Classy.
We touched on a lot of issues here today. What do you think are the biggest issues facing the Minnesota legislature? What are your priorities, and how do you plan to tackle them?
Mr. Matzich, let's start with you, please.
Again, I'm going to stress again, as Tip O'Neill says, all politics is local. And for the Iron Range, that's my #1 concern. Duluth is a city that stretches 25 miles long. The Iron Range, and its damn parochialism, has to remember this. We're a city that stretches along Highway 169 that's 100 miles long. And this is what we have to think at. Not at Virginia, Mount Iron, Hibbing, Gilbert, Ely. We gotta start thinking out of the box. For example, one Iron Range school district, in my opinion, is all that's needed with 4 Iron Range high schools. Take those revenues that come from out of the IRRB that are gonna be wasted on promoting school superintendents and all these other petty bureaucracies, consolidate, invest in the children, If you have an educational system that's the premier in this country, you're gonna see something happen in the next 10 years. You're gonna see economic development happen on its own and not with government support, because people wanna come up here, businesses wanna come up here. You got a great quality of life as far as the environment is concerned. You invested in your children, and every society wants to see that, and you're making a major contribution in your children then, and the future.
Representative Metza, on your priorities and what the biggest issue is facing the legislature, sir?
You know, I really think that we need to get down there and get the basic functions that people expect of their government done. I do have faith that we can work better together, and hope that with the economic situation up here seemingly recovering right now, not fully recovered, but recovering, it puts us in a different position as your local legislators to negotiate differently. We aren't there on our knees begging for our folks who are, and families who are hurting. And I think that if we can reprioritize getting a bonding bill again, a tax bill, and a transportation bill done, that'll do a lot to creating many, many jobs in the state over many, many years. There's been a backlog and a hump in the bonding bill, for example. And I'm going to use my colleague Dale Lewick, who is a Republican from the Iron Range delegation, who doesn't know how to communicate with Kurt Doubt, because we have these needs in all of our communities in Duluth and the southern part of my district, the wastewater treatment investments. This stuff isn't negotiable. These are taxpayer dollars that need to go back into the communities and get the projects done. And I'm going to go a little over, I apologize. There's a $1 billion hump that we've talked about in a bonding bill for 15, 20 years. Our state capacity is at about 3.3 billion in what we could bond for, and we need to get rid of that arbitrary number, look at it on a need basis, and get these projects done, whether it's in the southern part of the state, the western part of the state, up here on the range in Duluth. We need to work together as a team to get those basic functions out and back into the community so people can do what they would like to do, which is have investments and other things, which I think could happen if the bigger projects got taken off the plate.
Mr. Mazich, final word on priorities? 15
Again,
seconds.
my priority is the Iron Range,
Okay,
#1.
very good. All right, well, I thank the candidates one more time for being here, for participating. From Minnesota House District 6B, the incumbent is DFL Representative Jason Metza, Republican Matt Matizich. I thank those watching online at DuluthNewsTribune.com, and those in attendance. Will wrap up this forum by allowing each of the candidates 1.5 minutes to kind of state why voters should support you on November 8th. And Representative Metza, will begin with you.
You know,
There are no rebuttals.
since I've taken office, I've made one promise to people, and I feel that I've kept it, and that's I'll work hard. I can't guarantee that a session's not going to go messy or that politics won't get played, but I can guarantee that every day I'm not sick or something like that, that I can get up and work hard. And I feel like I've done that over a few years. I feel that I've accomplished quite a bit in terms of the bonding money we've brought home, in terms of bringing Highway 53 Transportation Fund money back to the district, and as well as working on good policies that will position our communities to do a better job in the future. And the hard part is that we're all human. I don't think that there's a person at the Capitol that, you know, is trying to necessarily stick it to one another, but they're fighting for things in their district which may oppose my district. And it's finding commonalities, I think, that is one of my strengths and what I'll continue to work on at the Capitol should I get reelected this year. I think that, you know, it's really easy to get bogged up in the what ifs and the could be's, but there's a lot to do on a day-to-day basis, and that's the example I gave with the broadband bill. I didn't carry the bill. Two other gentlemen were, and I thought, man, that's going to affect my community and rural areas over the course of many years. And so I want to interject myself into that conversation and see if I can make it better in hopes for everyone, but my area too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matizich.
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak. And again, I want to stress, I'm a strong believer in Tip O'Neill's philosophy that all politics is local. I am from the north side of Virginia. I am an Iron Ranger. I live here by choice. And I am sick and tired of Metro liberals, greenies, hurting the range and trying to put their philosophy forward. Remember, society needs these minerals, whether it's steel, copper, platinum. It's amazing what these things do. We're not going back into the dark ages. We're in the forward ages. But I will never allow these guys to stomp on the Iron Range. I will fight and fight and fight against these people and these Metro green liberals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Thank you all.
Thank you, man.
Hey, Jason, how are you doing?